Imagine being treated like you don't matter, abandoned, hurt, and left to survive on your own. This is the story of a dog who went through unimaginable pain, but his resilience will leave you speechless. Stay with me because the ending will astonish you. Our story begins in a small, quiet town where Max, a golden retriever mixed with soulful brown eyes, lived a life far removed from the love and care every dog deserves. Max wasn't born into a cruel world. In his earliest days as a puppy, he was energetic and playful with a heart full of trust for the humans around him. But fate had a different plan for Max. Max's owner, a man named Rick, took him in on a whim. Rick wasn't looking for a companion or a loyal friend. He wanted a watchdog, someone to guard his yard and property. To Rick, Max wasn't a living being with feelings and needs. He was just an asset, a tool to keep intruders at bay. From the very beginning, Max's life lacked love. Instead of being welcomed into the house as part of the family, he was chained outside in the backyard, rain or shine. His collar was tight, leaving deep marks on his neck, and his chain was short, barely allowing him to move. It wasn't uncommon for days to pass without food or water. Max's once lustrous golden coat became matted and dirty. His eyes, once filled with curiosity and wonder, grew dim. The world around him became a prison, and his days were a cycle of loneliness and hunger. Rick rarely checked on him, and when he did, it wasn't to offer kindness. Max's cries for attention were met with harsh words or worse, a raised hand that made him cower in fear. The neighbors began to notice Max's worsening condition. His ribs were visible through his thin coat, and his movements were slow, as though every step took immense effort. He barked frequently, not in anger but in desperation, hoping someone would hear his silent plea for help. One neighbor, an older woman named Clara, often glanced into Rick's yard when she passed by. Clara was a lifelong animal lover, and Max's situation broke her heart. She wanted to intervene but feared confrontation with Rick, who had a reputation for being aggressive and unkind. Still, she couldn't sit idly by. Clara started leaving food and water for Max near the edge of the fence. At first, Max was hesitant, unsure if the food was safe or if it was a trap. But hunger eventually overcame his fear, and he began eating the meals Clara left for him. Seeing Max eat and wag his tail, even slightly, gave Clara a glimmer of hope. But as the weeks went on, Clara realized that small acts of kindness wouldn't be enough to save Max. His health was deteriorating rapidly, the weather was getting colder, and Max had no shelter from the freezing winds and rain. Clara knew that if she didn't act soon, Max wouldn't survive the winter. One particularly cold night, Clara made a decision that would change Max's life forever. She picked up the phone and called a local animal rescue organization. Her voice trembled as she described Max's condition, begging them to intervene before it was too late. The rescue team arrived the following morning. Armed with legal documents and a determination to save Max, they knocked on Rick's door. The confrontation wasn't easy. Rick was defensive, claiming that Max was just a dog and that he didn't need anyone meddling in his affairs. But the rescue team stood firm, pointing out the clear signs of neglect and abuse. Eventually, Rick relented, more out of annoyance than compassion. When the rescuers unchained Max, he didn't bark or growl. He simply stood there, too weak and defeated to resist. As they lifted him into the rescue van, he glanced back at the yard that had been his prison for so long. It was as though he was saying goodbye to a life of suffering, even if he didn't yet understand what lay ahead. The ride to the rescue center was quiet. Max lay on a soft blanket, his body trembling, not from cold, but from fear of the unknown. The rescuers spoke to him in soothing tones, trying to assure him that he was safe now. But trust wasn't something Max could give easily, not after everything he had endured. When they arrived at the rescue center, Max was taken to the veterinary team for full examination. The results were grim. He was severely underweight, his fur was infested with fleas, and his skin was riddled with sores from the tight collar he had worn for so long. His teeth showed signs of malnutrition, and his paws were cracked from standing on hard, uneven surfaces. But the most concerning discovery wasn't physical, it was emotional. Max was terrified of humans. He flinched at every movement and avoided eye contact as though expecting to be hit or yelled at. It was clear that his trust in people had been shattered, and rebuilding it would be a long and challenging journey. Despite his condition, the rescue team saw something special in Max. Beneath the fear and pain was a gentle soul longing for love and connection. They named him Max, a strong and hopeful name that symbolized the new beginning they hoped to give him. The first few days at the rescue center were difficult for Max. He stayed in the corner of his kennel, refusing to eat or interact with anyone. The staff and volunteers were patient, giving him space while slowly introducing him to a life free of chains and fear. One volunteer, a young woman named Lily, took a particular interest in Max. She spent hours sitting outside his kennel, reading books aloud in a soft, soothing voice. She didn't try to touch him or force him to interact, she simply wanted him to know that he wasn't alone. After several days, Max began to show small signs of trust. He would glance at Lily from the corner of his eye or inch closer to the food bowl she left for him. These tiny steps were victories for the team, proof that Max's spirit wasn't entirely broken. As word of Max's rescue spread, donations poured in from people who were moved by his story. The rescue center used the funds to provide Max with the medical care and resources he needed to begin his healing journey. Max's story was just beginning. Though his past was filled with pain, His future held the promise of something extraordinary, something no one could have predicted. The first days at the rescue center were filled with uncertainty. Max had never experienced the love and care that he was about to receive, and his trust in humans had been all but shattered. When the volunteers first approached his kennel, Max would shrink into the corner, pressing himself against the bars as if trying to make himself as small as possible. He would cower whenever someone got too close, fearful that any sudden movement would result in pain. It wasn't just his physical condition that needed attention, it was his emotional and psychological state. Max had to relearn how to trust people, how to experience love without fear, and how to find safety in a world that had once been cruel to him. The rehabilitation process would take time, patience, and above all, compassion. The veterinary team immediately began examining Max to assess the full extent of his condition. They found that he was severely malnourished, his ribs protruded sharply beneath his thin coat, and his fur was matted with dirt and debris. Max had been living in harsh conditions for so long that his body had started to show the effects of prolonged neglect. The first step in his medical care was addressing his malnutrition. They provided him with soft, easily digestible food and a steady supply of water to help him regain strength. His condition was so dire that they had to be cautious not to overwhelm his fragile system with too much food too soon. Slowly, Max began to show signs of improvement. His coat, though still patchy and dull, started to regain some luster, and his energy levels began to rise as he put on weight. But his physical recovery, though important, was only one piece of the puzzle. It was clear that Max's emotional wounds would be much harder to heal. For the first few weeks, he barely interacted with anyone. He would only eat when no one was around, taking quick, hesitant bites before retreating back to the safety of his kennel. Every time a volunteer approached him, he would shy away, his body trembling as if anticipating another round of abuse. The staff knew that patience was key. They didn't rush Max into socializing or bonding. They allowed him to take the lead, trusting that, in time, he would feel safe enough to engage. One volunteer, a young woman named Lily, quickly became a calming presence for Max. She had volunteered at the center for years and had a special gift for connecting with animals. She understood the importance of building trust with Max at his own pace. Lily spent hours sitting near his kennel, reading books aloud in a soft, comforting voice. She didn't try to force him to make eye contact or approach her. She simply allowed him to feel her presence and know that she was there for him. At first, Max would keep his distance, but over time, he began to inch closer to Lily. The soft, consistent sound of her voice seemed to soothe him. One afternoon, after weeks of careful patience, Max did something remarkable. He took a step closer to Lily and sniffed her hand. It was a small gesture, but it was monumental in terms of the trust he was starting to build. Lily's heart swelled with joy as she gently extended her hand toward him. Max hesitated, his eyes filled with uncertainty. But after a moment, he touched her hand with his nose, testing it, unsure of what to expect. When he didn't feel the sharp sting of punishment, he took another cautious step forward. Slowly, Max began to show interest in the humans around him, though he was still very much on guard. As the weeks went by, Max's physical health improved. He gained weight, his fur began to grow back in patches, and his energy levels increased. But his emotional recovery was still fragile. He would occasionally have moments of anxiety, especially when new people would enter his space. But Lily was patient, offering him calm reassurance with every interaction. She never pushed him too hard, never rushed him into things he wasn't ready for. Slowly, Max learned that he wasn't alone anymore, and he began to respond to the love and care around him. One of the most significant milestones in Max's recovery came when he was introduced to the play area outside the shelter. After months of being confined to his kennel, the idea of open space seemed intimidating at first. He was hesitant to step outside, but Lily encouraged him, holding out her hand and speaking to him softly. When Max finally ventured into the yard, his entire body relaxed for the first time in what felt like forever. The sun on his fur, the grass beneath his paws, it was as if he was experiencing freedom for the first time in his life. Max would occasionally run around the yard, his tail wagging in short bursts, though he would always retreat to the safety of the shelter when the world became too overwhelming. But with every day, he grew more comfortable with his new surroundings. He began to trust Lily more, allowing her to take him for walks around the center, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. The rescue team and volunteers marveled at Max's resilience. Despite everything he had endured, he still had the capacity to trust again, to open his heart to new experiences. It was a testament to the strength of his spirit and the power of patience and love. As Max's emotional healing progressed, the staff at the rescue center continued to focus on his physical well-being. They ensured that he had regular checkups and they provided him with the best possible food and care. His recovery was slow but steady, and with every passing day, Max seemed to grow stronger both in body and in spirit. Around the 2-month mark, Max had begun to show a personality that had once been buried beneath layers of fear. He started to wag his tail more often, responding to his name with a quick, happy bark. He even began to engage and play with other dogs at the center. For the first time, it was clear that Max wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. But the team knew that the road ahead still had challenges. Max had a long way to go before he could fully heal from the scars of his past. But they were confident in his progress and in the love that surrounded him. It was becoming clear that Max had the potential to be something truly special, to not only heal himself, but also to help heal others. Max's recovery was a story of resilience and hope. While the journey had been long and difficult, it was also filled with moments of joy and triumph. His transformation had only just begun, but the team at the rescue center could already see that he was destined for greatness. In the coming months, Max would continue to grow stronger, his bond with the volunteers deepening. But little did they know, something incredible was about to happen. Stay with us as we continue Max's story, because the next chapter will show you just how far this brave dog has come. What he did 2 years later will leave you in awe. Max had come a long way since the first days at the rescue center. The progress he had made, both physically and emotionally, was nothing short of remarkable. What started as a fragile, traumatized dog had slowly transformed into a dog with hope, energy, and a willingness to trust again. But Max's journey wasn't over yet. He had one more challenge to face, finding a forever home. The staff at the rescue center had grown attached to Max. They had been there for every step of his recovery, offering him love and care when he needed it the most. They had witnessed his transformation from a terrified, malnourished dog to a more confident and vibrant animal. But they also knew that for Max to experience true healing, he needed a family of his own, a place where he could thrive and continue to grow. As Max's recovery progressed, the staff began to prepare for his adoption. They knew he would need a special family, one that understood his past and could provide him with the patience and love he needed to fully flourish. Max wasn't just any dog, he was a survivor, and his story would need to be understood by the people who were considering bringing him into their lives. And one day, a couple named Laura and Mark Johnson came into the rescue center. They had recently lost their elderly dog, and after months of grieving, they decided it was time to open their hearts to another dog. Laura and Mark weren't just looking for any dog, they were looking for a dog who needed a second chance, a dog who had been through hardships and could benefit from their love and care. When they first met Max, they were struck by his gentle nature. Despite his past, he had an undeniable warmth about him, and he responded to their voices with cautious curiosity. He wasn't as skittish as he had once been, but there was still a certain wariness in his eyes and instinctuous need to protect himself from potential harm. Laura crouched down to Max's level, speaking softly to him as she extended her hand toward him. Max at first hesitated. He looked at her hand, then back at her face, unsure of what would happen next. After a moment of silence, he took a tentative step forward, his nose gently brushing against her fingers. It was the first time Max had ever initiated physical contact with someone outside the shelter staff, and it was a clear sign that he was beginning to trust again. Mark watched from a distance, impressed by the connection that seemed to be forming between Max and Laura. He had always been a dog lover, and he could see the potential in Max, but he also knew that adopting Max would require patience and understanding. Max had been through a lot, and it was clear that he would need time to adjust to a new home. The Johnsons spoke with the shelter staff about Max's history, learning about the abuse and neglect he had endured before being rescued. They were deeply moved by his story, and they knew in their hearts that they were ready to offer him the home he deserved. The decision wasn't made lightly. Adopting a dog like Max would require a commitment to his well-being, both physically and emotionally. But Laura and Mark were determined to give Max the love and stability he needed. After a few more visits to the shelter to get to know Max better, the Johnsons officially adopted him. It was a bittersweet moment for the staff at the rescue center. They had grown fond of Max and would miss his presence, but they also knew that this was the best possible outcome for him. Max was going to a family who understood him, and they would provide him with the safe and loving environment he needed to continue his journey of healing. The transition to his new home wasn't without its challenges. Max was nervous in the beginning, unsure of his new surroundings and the people who now called him their own. He was introduced to the house gradually, given time to explore at his own pace. Laura and Mark were patient, allowing him to acclimate to his new environment without forcing him into anything he wasn't ready for. Max had his own space in the home, an area where he could retreat if he felt overwhelmed. Laura and Mark made sure he had a comfortable bed, plenty of toys, and access to the outdoors. They also made sure to maintain a routine which helped Max feel secure and safe. It was clear that Max was still working through some trust issues, but the Johnsons were determined to help him feel at home. One of the first signs of progress came when Max started to follow Laura and Mark around the house. He had always been cautious and hesitant, but as the days passed, he began to seek their company. At first, it was just brief moments when Max would follow them from room to room, his tail wagging ever so slightly. But over time, he grew more comfortable with their presence and he began to spend more time near them. Max also began to show interest in the backyard. At the rescue center, he had spent time outside in the yard, but he was still apprehensive about the wide open spaces. But with Mark and Laura by his side, Max began to enjoy the freedom of the yard. He would run around, his tail wagging energetically as he chased after balls and played in the grass. It was clear that Max was beginning to reclaim a part of himself that had been buried by fear and trauma. In the months that followed, Max blossomed in ways that no one could have imagined. His coat grew thick and shiny, a far cry from the matted, dirty fur he had arrived with. He gained weight, and his once skeletal frame filled out. But more than anything, Max's personality began to shine through. He became playful, affectionate, and full of energy. He loved to cuddle with Laura and Mark, curling up on the couch next to them after a long day of play. One of the most beautiful changes was Max's ability to connect with people again. He had once been so terrified of humans, so distrustful and withdrawn. But now he would greet visitors with a wagging tail and a friendly bark. He was no longer the scared dog who cowered at every movement. He was a confident, loving companion who thrived in the presence of his family. But even more remarkable was the bond that had formed between Max and the Johnsons. They had given him the space to heal, the patience to grow, and the love to thrive. Max had, in turn, given them his heart, a heart that had once been broken but was now full of love, loyalty, and gratitude. As Max continued to adjust to life with the Johnsons, he began to display new behaviors that reflected his deepening trust. He would nuzzle Mark's hand when he wanted affection, and he would rest his head in Laura's lap when he felt safe. It was clear that Max was no longer the same dog who had been abandoned and mistreated. He had become a beloved member of the family, and the Johnsons couldn't imagine their lives without him. It wasn't long before Max became a local hero in his community, and his story began to spread. People marveled at the incredible transformation he had undergone from an abused, neglected dog to a confident, loving companion. But little did anyone know Max was about to do something truly extraordinary, something that would cement his place as a symbol of resilience and hope. Max's new life was a testament to the power of second chances. He had been given a new beginning, a chance to live a life free from pain and fear. But it was also a reminder of the impact that love, patience, and kindness can have on a life. Max's transformation was nothing short of miraculous, and it was only just beginning. Stay tuned, because what happens next in Max's journey will blow you away. The incredible act of heroism that he would later perform would leave everyone in awe, proving just how far a dog's heart can go when it's given the love and care it deserves. Max had already made a remarkable recovery from the horrific abuse and neglect he had suffered. His physical health was restored, his emotional scars were healing, and he had finally found a family who cherished him. Max had already proven that resilience runs deep within him, but no one, not even his loving new family, could have predicted what would happen next. This chapter of Max's story is truly a testament to the extraordinary bond between a dog and his family, and it will show you the depth of his courage, loyalty, and love. It was a warm, quiet afternoon when Max's life took an unexpected turn, one that would forever change the lives of everyone around him. Laura and Mark had decided to take Max to the local park for a fun day out. Max loved his outings, and they had become a regular part of his life. The park was a large, expansive green space where Max could run, explore, and socialize with other dogs. It was a place where Max could truly be free, a far cry from the days when he was confined to a small, cold backyard. On this particular day, the park was unusually busy. Families were enjoying picnics, kids were running around, and several dogs were playing together. Max, now a happy, energetic dog, was having a blast. He was running through the tall grass, chasing after a frisbee that Mark had thrown, his tail wagging so vigorously that it almost seemed like it would take off. Laura and Mark were laughing and enjoying the sight of their beloved dog finally living the life he deserved. But little did they know a life-threatening situation was unfolding nearby. A family with a young child had set up a picnic near the edge of the park. The child, a curious toddler named Emma, had wandered away from the blanket, attracted by the sound of a nearby dog barking. The parents, distracted by their conversation, didn't realize that Emma had strayed too far. Max, being the keenly observant dog that he was, noticed the small child wandering near the park's edge. Emma's curiosity led her to get too close to the edge of the pond, where the ground was muddy and slippery. She took a step too far, and in an instant, she lost her balance and tumbled into the water. The pond was deep in some areas, and the current was strong, making it difficult for anyone to get to Emma in time. She splashed and screamed for help, but the sounds of the busy park muffled her cries. Max immediately saw the danger. In a split second, his instincts kicked into overdrive. Without hesitation, he bolted toward the water, his eyes fixed on Emma as she struggled to stay above the surface. He was no longer the timid, cautious dog who had once been afraid to trust. Max was now a confident and loyal protector, and in that moment, nothing mattered more than saving the little girl. Mark and Laura, who had been focused on Max and the frisbee, heard the frantic barking and turned just in time to see Max leap into the water after Emma. At first, they were too stunned to understand what was happening, but when they saw Emma flailing in the water, panic set in. Max was swimming with powerful strokes, using his strong legs to propel himself toward the girl. Max reached Emma just as she was about to go under for the third time. He grasped her by the back of her shirt with his teeth, pulling her toward the shore. The current was strong, but Max didn't let go. He struggled to keep his head above the water, his fur heavy with the weight of the soaked fabric, but he refused to stop. His protective instinct was undeniable, and he was determined to get Emma to safety. It felt like an eternity as Max fought against the current, dragging Emma toward the shore. His muscles burned, and his body was exhausted from the strain, but he never slowed down. Max's heart was full of purpose, and his eyes were fixed on one goal: to save the child who had wandered too far. Finally, Max reached the shallow end of the pond where the current was weaker. In a final burst of energy, he dragged Emma to the safety of the bank. Emma's face was pale, and her lips were trembling, but she was breathing. She had been saved. Max gently nudged her with his nose, as if to reassure her that she was safe now. He didn't stop there. He stayed by her side, his body still quivering from the cold water, as if making sure she was okay. It wasn't long before Laura and Mark rushed over, their hearts racing in their chests. They had seen the whole thing unfold, and their relief was palpable when they saw Emma on the shore, still alive, with Max by her side. The parents of the child arrived just moments later, also in a state of shock and disbelief. They immediately scooped Emma up and held her tight, thanking Max over and over again for saving her life. Max, drenched and exhausted, stood quietly by their side, his breathing heavy but steady. He didn't need words, his actions had spoken volumes. An ambulance arrived quickly, just as a precaution, to check on Emma. The paramedics confirmed that she had been submerged in the water for a brief period but was otherwise unharmed. The family was incredibly grateful for Max's heroic act and made sure to express their deep appreciation for his bravery. Max, however, didn't seem to need any praise. He had done what he had to do, instinctively without seeking recognition. Mark and Laura were in awe of what Max had done. It wasn't just that he had saved a life, it was the fact that Max, a dog who had once been so broken and fearful, had transformed into a dog capable of such immense bravery. His actions were a testament to the strength of his character and the bond he had formed with his new family. As word spread about Max's heroic rescue, the story quickly gained attention. Local news outlets reported on the incredible feat, and soon Max became a local hero. People came from all over to meet the dog who had saved a child's life, and Max was showered with praise and affection. Yet, despite all the attention, Max remained humble. He wasn't interested in the accolades or the spotlight. He was simply content with the knowledge that he had done something good, something that had made a difference. The family of the young girl, Emma, reached out to Laura and Mark to express their gratitude once more. They sent a bouquet of flowers and a handwritten card that read, "To Max, the brave and selfless hero, thank you for saving our daughter. We will never forget what you did, and we are forever in your debt. You are truly a remarkable dog." For Max, this act of heroism marked the final chapter in his incredible journey. From a broken, neglected dog to a life-saving hero, Max's story was one of resilience, loyalty, and love. It was a reminder that no matter the pain we experience in life, we all have the capacity for greatness, even when we least expect it. Max's transformation had been nothing short of miraculous, and while his journey had started in the depths of despair, it had led him to become a beacon of hope for others, a shining example of the power of love and second chances. As Max continued to live with Laura and Mark, his life became full of joy, love, and meaning. He had not only found a home, but had become a hero who would forever be remembered for his incredible courage. His story will live on as a reminder of the amazing things that can happen when a dog is given the chance to heal and thrive. Max's second chance at life had turned into something truly unbelievable, and his legacy would inspire countless others for years to come. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey with Max. If his story touched your heart, be sure to share it with others, and remember, the power of love and compassion can change lives in ways we can never predict. Max's story is just one example of how a second chance can transform the world.